I basically created this sneaker starting with an image that I got from Midjourney. I am not a shoe designer. I am a designer, but I'm not a shoe designer. I do love sneakers, and so I wanted to create a sneaker. But the question was, where do I start? Like, it takes a certain type of training for you to be able to move your hand and being able to draw a nice sketch of a nice sneaker, right? I can do that with buildings because I'm an architect and an engineer, and so I've spent a lot of time doing that, and I have a relatively good sense of proportions when it comes to designing buildings. I'm now learning a little bit how to do this with creatures because I'm trying to create robots and characters for designs. This is one of those things that I wanted to learn. Shoes are a big passion of mine. I cannot really move the camera, but behind me, I don't know if you can see it. Maybe, no, the camera doesn't allow it. But behind me, there is a wall full of shoes, like literally, like I got sneakers of all sorts. And so the idea of me wanting to draw a sneaker was always there, right? Uh, the so Because of AI, I thought, why don't I try to use this tool as a way for me to create a blueprint for something that then I can go and remix and maybe photo bush, because this is an exercise that I remember I was doing also at the University of Architecture, where a teacher would give us an image of a building, say of Zaha Hadid, and he would say, try and take this information and create a collage of your own building. Don't think too much about formalism, try to be creative. And so, we would do these exercises where we would take basically collages and make different things. So I said, okay, I can use sort of like the same attitude towards this project. And so starting from this sketch that I got out of Midjourney, basically the prompt was futuristic sneaker with chunky sole. I don't even think I asked Midjourney to make it a Nike sneaker. I might be wrong, but it did it automatically. There are quite a few elements that remind me of the HyperAdapt, as well as some of the Kobe shoes. There are also some shapes from another brand of shoes, which is called Li Ning, which is a Chinese brand. I think they sponsor Wade, the basketball player. And so, I thought this was really interesting. Like, this doesn't work as a shoe because, like, the volumes are all wrong and the structure is simply not there. But it's definitely a great starting point. And so I took this sketch and I brought it into Photoshop. And it took me a little bit of time to come up with this design because basically, as I was designing, I was also studying a little bit the design to see in which direction I was going. And it took me 2 days simply because, I would look at this, then I would get tired, I would come back and maybe add the mesh here, maybe add a little bit of three-dimensionality to the logo. I would add these little elements on the side. Good evening, Jonathan. How's it going? And so in this case, AI was a really good help for me to get started with this project. Now, the reason also why I wanted to do this project is because right now AI is really in the middle of a cyclone and everybody is either hating it or loving it. Personally, myself, the thing that I'm trying to answer right now is, how is design going as a job, as a career, going to look like in the future? If we look at precedents of the way our job has evolved as a 3D artist, mainly in the field of architectural visualization, but also in other things like, games and movies. Hi, Javier. Basically, you know, uh, 15 years ago, if you had to make, say, a project of interior design, right? You did not really have any assets which were available for you to buy. Evermotion, I think they started to make assets, yeah, around 15 years ago. I might be wrong. And so every time that you had to make something, you had to start from scratch. And I do remember that back in the days, every time that we were doing something, we would basically try and save those models into organized libraries so that we could use them again. So the idea of optimizing work has always been at the base of everything that we do. Now, of course, I'm not saying that AI is the same exact thing, but I do see the reason why it exists right now, because it is a tool that allows you to optimize quite a few bunch of tasks. Like, for instance, get a project started, right? Which is actually probably the most important thing, right? Because you want to have a blueprint of anything that you want to do in order to do it and pursue it. And so on that end, I do see AI as an incredible tool to do that. And by me making this project, I'm definitely sure that this is going to be the way forward in the future. We are going to have tools that allow us to generate designs and that will give us a kickstart in the right direction. Obviously, this is not something that it's for everybody. Like, you still have to be a designer. You still have to be trained as a designer in order to understand how to use these tools. Because, yeah, of course, everybody can make something, but the evolution of a project is still a process that it's linked to human interactions, right? At least I think. On the other end, there is the issue of copyright and AI taking the work of other artists, which I also think it's a big problem. Even though, in all honesty, like, you see, there is the problem is split into. On one end, there is the issue of people copying other artists' work. On the other, there is the fact that this is usually what artists do anyway, right? They make a mud board of inspiration and they try to steal the best parts from other projects in order for them to create something new. Now, people might say, yeah, that's not exactly the same thing, which is, of course, also true. To me, the biggest issue with stealing the work of other people is in the fact that when we do train models to become sufficient in producing a certain style of art, we're basically taking those models and we're making them openly available to everybody. And so, for instance, this is not something that happens on the scale of one person or one team only. It's something that now we're making sort of like available to everybody. And so this is where I see it being a problem, because you commercialize it at a scale for whoever owns it can actually sell it to other people, right? Not to mention the fact that these models, they're specifically designed for different types of AI engines. And so, who owns then the prompts, the codes, and everything? Is it the company that creates Midjourney? So, do they become the owners of the model that you train? These are all like open questions that I still think that the industry and the people behind all this technology need to answer. But anyway, let me read. Oh, good evening. So many people joining. Hi, Adam. Yeah, it is the end of the weekend, Jonathan. Tomorrow I start with a 5 days Unreal workshop. Javier, yes, I'm trying to get some rest. Um, Adam, servus. Wie geht's? Um, okay, so basically, let me just continue talking a little bit about the work that I've created, so that you basically understand um, how I used AI and how I was able to sort of like put myself ahead in this process. So when I created, well, when Midjourney created this for me, I thought it was a great starting point. It gave me sort of like a blueprint to start sketching, proportions and the basic shapes. But then, of course, like if you see the evolution from this design to this design, although you can see similarities, one can tell that there is been a little bit of rework, right? And so at this point, can we say that AI did the biggest part of the work? Is it fair to say? I don't know, because like I was there, and yes, whilst I was able to get a head start using I still had to put a lot of work to create the sketch myself. When I created the sketch and then I started to move into 3D and did the first render tests using a substance paint, one thing that I've realized is that these strong colors, even though they were a good idea in the sketch, they did not look that good in 3D. And so, like the iteration between the three different medias, this was also a process that it's pretty much a human process, right? It's not AI based. And given that in the future maybe AI can do this as well, I still think that it takes the eye of a trained designer in order to make those decisions. Given that you can have a very talented client that is capable of like making very good decisions, but that person will have to do his job plus the designer job. And so, this idea that AI is going to take your job as a designer away, I think it's more a question of like people should pay attention and should see what is happening before, jumping to conclusions. And maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. I mean, there are quite a few people watching this, so, I'd be interested in knowing your opinion. Anyway, once I started to, I was happy with the actual sketch. What I did, I brought the sketch inside of Blender. Let me switch off some. I think I deleted the actual sketch. What is happening here? Why is it so dark? Oh, because I switched on the wireframe. Okay. And so basically, what I had to do when I started with the design, I basically brought the sketch in, and with the sketch, I started to basically create the first shapes, and there are some things that are still not perfect, like I'm still not capable of creating super smooth surfaces in Blender, but it was a nice exercise because I know now that I'm capable of create these shapes, and I have sort of like a good understanding of most tools. Hold on, I really need to change this because it's bothering me looking at it. Not that it's going to make a lot of difference because the low poly is going to look screwed up anyway. But anyway. Okay, make this look a little bit more curvy. There you go. And so what I did, I started to it's still not good. Okay, I'm not gonna look at it. I started modeling this starting from the sole, because I think that the sole was the part which had a lot more character. I specifically, the thing that I liked the most was that you can see that this is a sole in the back, but then this sort of like melts together and blends and becomes, you know, one part with the top of the shoe. And so I wanted to sort of like recreate this kind of stuff. I did try on the sketch, but I did not like it because it looked a little bit like, I don't know, I didn't manage to do it right. It was too pointy, and I thought, okay, I'll just separate the geometry. Let's see. Okay, now I was working in symmetry, and this was great because, you know, when you work in symmetry, you do one side and then the other side is done automatically. But then I found myself having the problem that the inside of the shoe did not look that good, and also the shoe didn't follow the shape of the foot. And so at a certain point, when I was happy with the general look, I had to go back and sort of like change the other side of the design. Now, the way I worked this, I separated this model in 4 pieces because I knew that I was going to paint this in Substance Painter. And so in order for me to prepare the model in the proper way, I had to split it into pieces that would allow me to then paint the model. Now, when the model, the eye poly, was done, I started to look for chances for me to tessellate the model, and so create a low poly version without having to do this by hand. Don't get me wrong, I do like to retopologize by hand, and it's a lot of fun, but it's a long time, you know, because like every time that you want to retopologize something, you have to take the model and then you have to go and create each single polygon by hand. And so I started to look on the internet, and I found a software called Quad Remesher. I actually downloaded it this morning, and it's an amazing piece of software that allows you to automatically retopologize things super quickly. And so, you know, like in a way, this is also sort of like an AI, right? One might argue, well, you're not stealing anything here because you're basically, it's more like of a mathematical execution that, you know, this software does on the mesh. But it's still sort of like an artificial intelligence if you think about it. And so, you know, there is also this double standard that we have to watch out, because like if we say yes to something, can we say no to something else? I don't have an answer. I'm just, you know, bringing out the points so that you can do a little bit of thinking for yourself. I'm not reading the comments. I'm gonna do it. Okay. Yes, but I'm also very afraid of the 5 days workshop because Unreal is crazy. My take on all this: human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Adam, possibly. Yes, actually, Jonathan, that was also one of the goals that I had. I actually have the Hyper Adapt, not the Back to the Future one, but I do have this one, and it really does look like it. Nike Hyper Adapt. There we go. I should charge them. I have this model, the blue one. There it is. And so if you look at this shoe, whoops. Well, this is the image. You will see that there are some elements that are basically just the same, right? And there are also like some Kobe shoes. Some of the first ones that have sort of like similar elements. The Nike, can't remember the name. A really old Kobe also has I'll have to spend a little bit of time researching it, but Yeah, if you like sneakers, you're probably aware of what it is that I'm talking about. Anyway, doesn't really matter. Okay, let me just move this out of the way. Okay, so once and so like this tool is incredible. Like, look at this. I'll just show you again so that you can have an idea. So this is basically the high poly, and you can see it if I switch it on. If I go to edit mode, you see, look how many polygons, yeah? And then I simply said, okay, here is the, say that I do 4,000 polys. I leave all the settings by default. The software is called Quad Remesher. And if I now click on remesh it, it will take a minute or two to calculate. It's so powerful. Remeshing in process, 19%, 20%. Okay, it will take a second, but you'll get an idea. For now, I'm gonna fire up also Substance Painter, so you'll see how I painted it. Now, I really hope that you're gonna stay until the end. We're gonna stay another 5 minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then I have a question for you because I'm really interested in knowing your opinion. Okay. Recent files, sneaker 01. There you go. So this is the file as you see it in Substance Painter. Let me see if this is finished. There you go. Look at this. Now this is remeshed. I'll show you the wireframe. Look at this. This is amazing. Like, if I had to do this by hand, it will take me probably a good 2 to 3 hours, right? Yes, of course, I would have a lot more control, but I can do this instead of like going and do the remeshing by hand. And maybe if I have a problem with the loops, I can go in and correct the loops by hand. And so, for instance, if I'm looking for a loop and I see that this loop doesn't work, maybe I'll go and look for another loop here. Now see, okay, this one it's working, sort of, like here it crosses here. So maybe I can come in here and cut a line somewhere, or maybe make a star or whatever. Or maybe I can just go and look for a loop that it's a little bit more external and then redesign it. If I spend an hour figuring out how to make the loops work, I will still save a lot more time than if I have to do the retopology together. Now, this is if we're talking about production. If I'm making, say, an asset that needs to be low poly for a video game, probably I will still go with the hand approach because I can have a lot more control, right? But in this case, like for production, where I do need a certain amount of density, I don't see a big problem using, this kind of tools. But anyway, this is beside the conversation. Now, once I have created the whole low poly and I created the maps, I then brought everything back inside of Blender. Created a material automatically using just the node wrangler. And then, of course, I rendered the image the way that I wanted. Oops, the area is switched off. There you go. Now, basically this was the process, if you watched it since the beginning, you probably can make sense of everything that I did. Now, the big question that I have to you watching from home is, do you think that this use of AI, the way that I've done it, is it ethical? Can I call this design mine? Or am I still stealing, or am I still doing something that it's not right in terms of ethics and in terms of skills and things that I'm required to do as a designer? I'm really interested in hearing your opinion because like as I said, I'm still trying to make sense of everything myself. um, I'm just curious to hear your opinion. Yes, Jonathan. Actually, the reality is that like if I was doing a um, like in this case, I was lazy. I could have done the super easy remeshing. Maybe I could have done a what is it called, a mm, shrink wrap on top of the iPoly and so yes, this is one of the questions. Like, is it ethical to use Midjourney in the process? But in the specific of the project that I've done, do you think that I'm allowed to say that this is my design? Is it my project? Or am I sort of like violating anything? Like, am I doing something that goes against the morals of somebody who works in the field of design? Adam. But so the issue that I currently have, it's more with like designers than with the tools, because yes, of course, like the designers, they want to be recognized for the work that they do. The artists, I'm an artist myself, we want to be recognized for the work that we do. And so, as I was saying yesterday in the other stream, social media is a currency, just like the euros or the dollars, right? The more we get attention, the better we feel. It's like earning money, right? But there is no real value, at least I think. Um, anyway, there was a time when, for instance, Unreal came out, and I do remember people making the switch to Unreal, and a lot of artists were like, "Oh, online render, this is so stupid, like why would you want to have that, like you need to have a good render engine to make the image, and then when you design, you don't want to look at the rendering, you want to design and focus on the rendering." I'm like, okay, now real time, it's basically a reality. When I was in the School of Architecture, my tutors were like, no, you cannot draw in 3D, you cannot make a 3D model, you should think in terms of plans and sections. And now virtually every architect designs in 3D. They don't even go to the plans, sections, and floors because it makes no sense. It's easier for you to go there with the volumetry. And some people might have a different opinion, but in my experience, this is what designers do. So now the conundrum that I'm having, or that I'm facing, it's a little bit, is that the right way to say it? Anyway, is that now there is this new technology, and a lot of people are using it, and they're making very interesting stuff. I do think that 2 years from now, using AI in production is going to be sort of like a standard, right? There will be tools that will allow you to speed up the initial part of the work, and people will use them. So what do I do? Do I boomer up and say, no, it's bad, it's shit, and like list all the problems and side with the people that just see the problems? Or do I try to look for the positives and hope that all the problems will be sorted in the meanwhile? Because I don't think that, AI it's going to slow down. I don't think that, people are complaining. It's not going to make people stop. People are going to continue using these tools. I'm sure of it. Anyway, I'll read the comments. I think it will raise some questions if you have taken the exact design of Midjourney, but if you alter it somehow because you use it as a reference, it will be okay in my opinion. I remember if you change slightly the design of your shoe from what Midjourney did. Some people might say, no, you're still stealing. You can never win on the internet. But, I don't do this to get to the truth. I do this because I'm just really interested in knowing what people's opinion is. I need it for myself, not for the others. Honestly, everybody will have a different opinion, and in the end, if the tool stays alive, it's because it's going to be, it's gonna make sense economically for those who develop it. That's, at the end of the day, that's what it is. I'm waiting for Adam to write something. Maybe Adam just left. Yes, Jonathan, I know. Companies are just like, that's the problem. I think that in the field of art and creativity, you have to have a manager that comes, trained from the field. Like, you cannot have executives that make decisions. Even the people in the highest ranks, they cannot make decisions on things that they don't know how the processes work. Somebody once told me that managers are those people that think that 9 women can give birth to a kid in 1 month. That sums it up. Adam, from what I've gathered, the big problem is the models that majority basically build up the premise that it's only been for research since they were a non-profit. But then again, they basically gave it to the partner companies like Midjourney that are for profit, and all the copyrighted material were using models without the consent. Yeah, this is I think that this is the biggest issue right now. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think that we're gonna walk back. Now that these tools are here, I don't think that people are going to be like, oh well, like some people get offended. Now we're not gonna use them anymore. I still think though, if you are the kind of person, and I know quite a few artists and designers that do that you just go to Midjourney, you type in something, and it's like like a phrase, and you do a second version, third version, fourth version of the same thing. And after 10 minutes, you just download something and you call that your own creation because you were talking to Midjourney. I can understand why people would get mad, right? But what if 5-6 years from now, this is the new standard of working? What if in 5 to 6 years, you're able to talk to Blender and say, Blender, please make me... I mean, you've seen it, right? The, what is it called? The Prometheus AI, which is basically a 3D tool for, not only for Blender, but even for Unreal and for other software. You can tell him, make me a 80s teenage bedroom, and the software is capable of like going to your library asset, choose all the models, create the room, and it can do it on its own, right? What if that becomes the new standard, that you don't type anymore in the computer, you just talk, right? And you say, Blender, I like that shoe, but please, this line, and you click on the line, make it smoother, and Blender then figures out a way to smooth out the curve by itself. If that becomes then the new standard, we're gonna look back and we're gonna say, can you believe when we thought that just talking to the computer was stupid? I'm reading the comments. Yeah, I'm extremely slow at doing that. Yeah, I've actually seen on LinkedIn somebody making a full campaign. I think it was for like a furniture manufacturer. Uh, I'm trying to remember, but maybe I'm wrong. And it was done completely with AI. And you know, some of the images they were okay. If you did zoom in, you could see a lot of like little artifacts and problems, but they were using it. And so if the client is happy with that, right? The designer, you know, if the designer has to do that and the client wants it because maybe he has heard that, you know, you can have AI stuff, what do you do? Jonathan, this is currently where I am at with you know, with my heart. That yeah, it's a tool that you use, and it will allow you, you know, to do things and to get started. Um, do you wanna just use AI to do stuff? Especially if you ask AI, hey, look at that type of artwork, like, you know, go in and do a Ben Mauro environment, post-apocalyptic, you know, for a video game, right? Then if it does everything and you don't tweak it, you don't change anything, can you call it yours? The problem is that doing images with AI, have no matter how good they look, in the end doesn't come close to the satisfaction I get from creating something myself. Yes, that's another thing. Like for instance, you know, when I took the image from Midjourney and I started to sketch the image in Photoshop, I have to say this was like, it took me 2 days because I'm really bad at drawing, but it made me feel like I achieved something, you know, even though I had a starting point or whatever. Um, and then of course, you know, like taking that sketch and bringing it into Blender and then doing all the sculpting, that really like made me feel super good about the fact that, you know, now I can actually do this kind of stuff. Anyway, guys, I would like to entertain myself a little bit longer with you, but I have to get some stuff done. Tomorrow I have a course that starts and it's going to last 5 days. I just wanted to share these ideas. You know, I don't really have an opinion right now. Like I'm trying to be opinion fluid, simply because, you know, like I think we don't have enough information right now to make a call. Yes, there are a lot of things bad that are happening, and that, you know, like artists should be a lot more mindful of. Um, but yeah, that's the thing. Oh yes, I'll tell you this thing, Jonathan. So basically, we started to use Midjourney to not Midjourney DALI. We started to use it to communicate with some clients, and we said, okay, you know, we have this tool that you tell him stuff, and he can create like images. So you know, like we can have a conversation about it. And the funny thing is that when clients got in the conversation and we started to make these sketches, they got really frustrated because all the ideas that they had in mind, the machine was not capable to do what they wanted. And this is, I think, simply because, you know, like, it's never as simple as people want you to believe, you know, like, the fact that this is simple and it's accessible to everybody, it's one of those gimmicks that it's used by marketing geniuses to make it feel like you should jump on the AI train as soon as possible, otherwise you're gonna you're gonna be left behind or whatever. But anyway, guys, I really gotta get going for tomorrow. I'll give you a big kiss. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'm actually enjoying these hanging out sessions. And I hope that after the workshop next week, I can get back to do a little bit more streams. There are a couple of things that I would like to create, and maybe I can do this live. Anyway, I give you a lot of love. Jonathan, Adam, who else? Javier, thanks a lot for tuning in. Big kisses, and we'll talk soon, okay?